Here we are. Now that we're beyond meteorological spring and on the verge of real spring, daylight savings time is upon us. We are talking, I am talking about winter observing in the cold. It hit 60 plus today. uh, well, prepare for next year. We better chance of us having a snowstorm between now and April anyhow, or in April. Wouldn't be the first time. This is postponed a couple of times while we had some really professional speakers come in and talk to us in January and February. So I did make some changes to make sure everything said March and even check the sky to make sure I had the times right for March. So as you see here, I am now a NASA Solar System Ambassador, has been announced in the minutes. Last month, meeting minutes, or during the minutes meeting. Got the mascot of Michelin tires up there because when people get ready to go out to observe in the cold, they frequently dress up and look like a marshmallow. There are better ways to handle that. So I'm going to talk quickly about the agenda I've got today, and it is interruptible with questions, anecdotes, anything else that you've got to share. If Chris, I could ask you to monitor the chat, or people in the room that may have their hand raised. If you able to do that, if not, I'll ask Greg if he can do it.
Yeah, I can do it. All
right, thank you. So a little introduction. Apparel is what I'm going to get into, and somewhat equipment, modern apparel, and then modern equipment. And finally, I'm going to make it in the so and say that's the end. And if there's still time and interest, talk about what's available in the sky this month. So who am I? Who am I to tell New Englanders, Southern New Englanders anyhow, what to wear when they observe? And I just realized that autocorrect changed where to wear. All right, so I'll fix this up for next time I do this talk. I am not a native of Connecticut, Massachusetts, or Rhode Island. I lived in all three. I was literally born in Cleveland, even though I lived all around Cleveland, never in it. I was born there. So lake effect snow. Yeah, enough said there. You know the old story about walking uphill and downhill to school both ways in the snow. Yeah, that didn't happen. I was only half a mile from the school bus barn, but still plenty of times where we had feet of snow. And global warming, people have been commenting they aren't seeing the snow cover that they're used to. But anyhow, as an adolescent, at least by the time I was 16, I was a member of the Ohio Astronomical Association and the Cuyahoga County Astronomical Society, and went to visit many observatories and college campuses and universities around this greater Cleveland area, and even down to Columbus, where we got to see some of their analog computers at Ohio State. And even part of the Boy Scouts, I was in NASA Explorers as a teenager. More importantly, and germane to my story and history, is my father worked for NACA, and then one of the 4 NACA sites that were designated to be brought forward as a NASA site. We all knew it as the lab. Anybody who had family that worked there, who just called it as the lab, and likely even people that just had friends that worked there all knew it as a lab, but it was always known as the Lewis Research Center until just a few years ago when it was relabeled the Glenn Space Center. Moving forward into my journey from Rhode Island to Massachusetts to Connecticut, I joined the Astronomical Society of Greater Hartford in 2000, the same year that they had the very first mirror workshop. And frankly, it was my impetus to join. So in that year, I made a 10-inch while everybody else made a 6 and 8, and I was advised to do that. I already had an 8-inch. I didn't want an 8-inch. I wanted a 10-inch. But they had 2 instructors, both were friends of mine, even though they're neither long are friends with each other anymore. So they said, yeah, maybe we can handle having somebody doing a 10. And I went out observing at 25 degrees with a few other friends with snow all around us at the Runa Hill Nature Science Center with dragging a deep cycle battery from telescope to telescope. Then I made a 16, and finally I did make an 8 and then a 6. So I did everything bass backwards. So you could read that optical was rained out for a couple of years. My first volunteer experience started coming out of the Van Vleck Observatory, where they wanted to put donated money, I should say. They wanted to put up a sundial with the money that was donated, and it was donated from Deep Sky Wonders man who wrote that column, Walter Scott Houston. And I actually somehow managed to encourage them to consider refurbishing the scope 20-inch Clark to visual use. Now, the shop on campus made all the attachments and whatnot, and I actually brokered the sale for the Feather Touch because I had so many Feather Touch on all my telescopes. They wanted me to become a dealer. I said, no, that's not my goal in astronomy. Didn't want to make another one of my passions a vocation. But I did broker that sale, and they bought it. It was an older design because it's just been reworked recently. And the shop who made them all along bought the company when Phyllis and her husband retired, and actually made changes to the focuser to bring it up to date a little bit more. And so it was around that time that my wife and I had been doing timeshare swaps. We had bought one down in Orlando and went out to Vegas and finally to the Big Island and saw this desolate landscape. And we're driving through and said, what did we do here? Is this a mistake? But my goal is to get up to the top of Mauna Kea. Her goal is to be in Hawaii, go swimming. I managed to get into the optical shop even before the Keck 2 was totally online. It was starting to come online. Met one of the guys that were workmen, one of the contractors, and he introduced me to the optical shop and got me permission to go in there. Not some place the public goes, but he heard I was a telescope maker and allowed me to come in. And from there, I started volunteering simply because one of the staff had trouble focusing one of their Meads, the LX 200 16-inch. Well, it takes a delicate hand to get one of those things. Christmas 2000. Everybody remember that? There was ice in my driveway. I slipped and sprained my ankle, but I still managed to get a photo of the eclipse. So yes, I was doing observing in the cold. And anytime you're up in Mauna Kea, even if it's in the middle of summer, it's going to be cold. Moving right along, further up in 2003, celebrating astronomy. We did it at the Curtis Cultural Center here in Meriden, where I live with my wife. 2 scopes in front were part of that trip to Aruna Hill in 2005 at 25 degrees. I wore my electric clothes from my motorcycle gear. So I didn't have a motorcycle generator or alternator to keep 12-volt going. So I literally dragged a 12-volt deep cycle with me, sat it in the snow. And if I wanted to go look through Jay's 14.5-inch, that's the split ring on the left in that picture, from a 16 on my right, which is mine. I dragged the battery with me from my scope to his. The 10-inch in the back, which is on a Celestron CI 700, which was made by Los Mandy back then, is the first scope that I made. Binocular mount is also mine. Well, 2004, moving forward, we've got us cleaning up the Clark, getting ready for StarCom. Alan Hall was the president that year. Dick Parker's right behind me, and Tom Karp, which I don't know many of you know, but Tom recently got remarried and moved to Bridgeport. And in the meantime, he donated us a 12-inch Meade reflector, which had a very strange mount and tube. but the mirror cell was just non-existent. So Chris took everything apart for us, and either going to put it into a better Daub tube or reuse the base, or just make it into a truss system. Time will tell. I got to get the optics tested first. Anyhow, getting up to Mauna Kea, this is where cold country is, and I spent a lot of time up here. I have over 1,000 hours, volunteering. And when you're working at the Viz, you're at 8,300 feet. Up at the summit, anything is above 14,000. Keck is at 14,002. The summit is at 14,500, but everything up there is at least at 14,000, and it's cold. As you can see on the left picture, that's an ice reserve, a natural area that they don't even want any of the stones or rocks to be moved. In the background of the middle picture is the summit walk up to the top, and that's where the actual summit is. And my friend Kima Pahano, who was one of the rangers at the time, was also a Hawaiian chief. I watched his kids grow up through his eyes, and I didn't get to meet him until many years later. I spent 14 years up there as a volunteer, and eventually becoming volunteer of the year. As you can see, we are above the cloud layer, and we did, after finishing a summit tour, we came down to do volunteering at night where we did sky tours. We often had to wait for the clouds to come through us, and the dampness, they literally covered all the scopes. We didn't literally take the covers off until it was just time. And here's proof. I got several awards from Volunteer of the Year in 2014, and I can say that I was the only volunteer who lived on the mainland. Some of them lived on the mainland and moved to Hawaii and they were working there, but I literally came there on vacation. So I earned that in 2014. Going back to 2010, the Vele Vele Nui means the long bird that keeps coming back year after year. And in 2012, that was the Hoku, means star in Hawaiian. Hoku Kalea was another award for commitment for, I'm sorry, that's the bird that comes back. Long-term commitment is the Vele Vele Nui Award. And my friend Cliff, who is well into his 80s, got it in 2009 and 2010. And from what I understand, none of these plaques are on the wall at the visitor station anymore. Now you have to sign up a month in advance to go to the star party perhaps once a month. So I'm going to talk about what to wear, what not to wear, and by all means, hydrate. Wear lip balm. When to take the water right out of your body faster than anything else. I spend a lot of time in the cold observing. Chris, how are we doing? Any questions? Am I going too fast? Should I slow down, speed up?
Well, we're good.
Okay. I had to make sure you're still awake. So I think I spelled peel wrong too. Shouldn't that be two E's? All right.
Yes, it's fine. Unless you're ringing a bell.
What's that?
Unless you're ringing a bell.
Oh, no, I don't think I ever was qualified for seal material.
Okay.
Anyhow, a little sip of hydration here. You should always dress to peel when you're going out to observe in the cold. Even if it's just fall, dress to peel. It's hard to get warm after you've been cold. So it's much easier to pull down a zipper, take an arm out of a sleeve than it is to put an extra layer on and another layer because you got cold and now you just can't warm up. That's what I'm trying to say under the first line there. Wear your outerwear you plan to wear for the evening. Try not to wear super tight clothing. You want to be able to have air pockets between your layers of clothing. So your skin tight long johns may not be the best for you unless they're synthetic. Cotton underwear, cotton pants, cotton t-shirts don't do the well for you if they get wet if you start to perspire, because they will not wick the moisture away from your skin. They're just going to keep you wet and then cold. So merino wool is a good thing for socks and if clothing, but close to your body, synthetics are better than cotton. Add leggings as you start to get chilled, not cold. I wear a nice pair of wool sweatpants, so to speak. They're like a size 4X. They go over my long johns, over my jeans before I get them on my legs. So they're loose. And they get a little air. That pocket of air will help keep you warmer than tight-fitting clothing. They're always in the van, always available to me, just in case. Sweat ski pants are fabulous outerwear. You may not want to put them on when it's the fall and you're going out and it's like 50 degrees. But as it starts to get 40, 30, 25, you better put them on before you leave the house. One of my favorite accessories for apparel is a pair of 3 or 4X windbreakers. Whether they're weatherproof or not, the wind, keeping that off your head, off your body, even with a coat, you'll be amazed how much warmer wearing a windbreaker on top of your coat will keep you. Just fabulous. I'm glad I made a PowerPoint slideshow instead of using PowerPoint. All right, I've already talked about the long underwear stuff and the synthetic long underwear, merino wool, and ski pants. So caps, no skull caps, hooks, yes. So if you get a chance to go to Neef, and Celestron has the spin wheel where they sometimes do, and whatever it lands on, you win. They have a head accessory that we have in motorcycling that is just something that keeps your hair away from the top of your helmet. So you don't have to get your head gets warm and perspires. You'll get moisture or greasy hair on the top of your helmet. Those are hard to wash. But a little skull cap or something that you can put underneath a hat not only keeps you warm, but keeps the top of your helmet warm, but it's a great accessory to have when you need to take a hat off without exposing your head. So warm hats, and I have some things I can show and tell that aren't in pictures, and believe me, I will have pictures very shortly. Ear flaps really make a difference. Masks, scarves can help warm your breath and keep from fogging eyepieces. Remember the old pandemic mask? Wear one of those at the eyepiece and you'll believe your breath will be warmer for one, and for two, you'll have less chances of fogging up eyepieces. Now, when this talk was advertised for the Southern Vermont Association, Sovera, one of the people immediately piped up and said that she wears hand warmers now all the time because she had observed and got frostbite. So this type of thing is useful. I'm not going to say it's not. And buying them in bulk like this can save you some money because you'll give you a good 5 to 10 hours. And anybody that's observing for longer than 5 to 10 hours better have made a observatory. Right, Al? Moving on. Celestron has their powered hand warmers. Almost all of them have flashlights, and now many of them have USB plugs so you can warm up or charge up your cell phone too. 4,400 milliamp hour is more powerful than any cell phone today. They used to have 3,500 milliamp cell phones, not anymore. Some of these are 3-in-1 red flashlights, white flashlights, flashing lights, and of course the hand warmers. They're helpful. They're useful. You can keep it in the pocket, turn it on when you're low, and you wrap your hand around it when you need it, especially for those of us that have hand controllers. Now, I didn't include it in here, but many modern sets of gloves will have a index finger that works on a cell phone. That's really useful. It's hard to do for picking coordinates in it or typing in NGC numbers, but it is good for being able to start an application or wake up an application, but it's not good for everything you'll probably want to do with a hand controller or an application that runs a mount from a cell phone. The fire cell, which is the 6600 milliamp light hand warmer, unfortunately has been discontinued. That's the one in the lower right. Boy, that was a battery. All right, moving along. Let's move into some of the more advanced things of the day. There's two types of electric socks, those with batteries and those that run on batteries. The ones on the left use the type of plug that you would find in a battery tender. Those were from my motorcycle days, and literally put a dongle like a battery tender, attached it to the battery of the motorcycle. And when the bike was running, I had warm socks, leggings, shirt, and gloves, and they all interconnected. And there was just a rheostat I could use for like a volume control that controlled the amount of heat. They offered me, when I asked about changing some of the electrics out for something different, they said, we can give you a digital one instead. It's a little bit more advanced than just the old volume control, but I never got around to it. I went with the battery style on the right instead. Now, this is not part of my whole management system with long johns and shirts. This is something that is all AA batteries that has a plug that looks like a 9-volt that attaches to the heat sock enclosure that has 4 AA's in it. So it has 2 settings, high and low, and I put it in my Sorel boots, made in Canada. Best boots ever made is their logo. And they're built and made in Canada. You better believe they know how to make boots. But these are great. One set lasts me all winter long. But just do as I say and not as I do. I always forget to take the batteries out when the season is over, and they explode and corrode, and I'm using brass wire brushes to clean the contacts all over again. Pain in the neck. But those 2 types, included batteries and running off a 12-volt system or a 9-volt system. These electric gloves are an example of modern batteries because they use a lithium battery. And all of these are made by Germing, who are the people that also make my electric clothes for the motorcycle at 12-volt. Nowadays, with the rechargeable batteries, you can unplug the battery and plug in a new one when you run out of power. They're all 7-volt battery systems, DC, of course, just like the 12-volt, but these are 2,500 milliamp, but they have 4 different temperature settings. Now, you'll see when the different pair of gloves that I hold up, but the important part about any glove, whether it's electric or one that has a finger material that will allow you to open a cell phone, is that they are not just driving gloves, or certainly not fingerless gloves. You'll put them on and off a lot. You'll hate it, but it'll keep your hands warm. You're going to have a glove that comes down past the pulse point. The important part about wearing anything electric is to keep the extremities and the core warm. Electric socks, electric gloves, and a vest or a shirt, or at least enough clothing that keeps your heart warm. In this case, the electrics, besides keeping the hands warm, the length of the glove is covering the pulse point, which is important point about helping to keep your core warm. This is an electric jacket. It happened to me by Craftsman, but Craftsman stuff is all sold at Lowe's these days. And these are just 1.1 amp hour batteries, but they do have them in 1.6 from another maker. But this is just a jacket, not a hoodie. But they has for a place to keep extra batteries and interchange batteries when you need to up the supply, change the supply. They are lithium ion batteries, so there's no danger of, getting burnt or on fire, but you cannot wash these in a washing machine. These are all 5 amp, because they're USB powered and 1.1 amp hour. This is made by Milwaukee. I bought it at Home Depot instead of Sears Craftsman or at Lowe's. Lowe's also has, excuse me, jackets and hoodies and vests of other manufacturers besides Milwaukee. I think they've got DeWalt equipment over there too. This does not have the windproof shell that the Craftsman does, but it has a hood. Even though there's no electrics in the hood, hoods just make a great job of keeping the wind off your neck and keeping your hat on. But you can't turn your hat around when you're observing at the eyepiece here, so you have to wear a different style hat. Both of the Craftsman and the Milwaukee have 3 different heat levels, and I have used these all winter long. I go out at night and go for a walk. It's good for my hip and my senior citizenness. So I use these to gauge how long they're going to last before I have to change the batteries and at what temperature setting, low, medium, and high, so I can practice them for observing. And there's also room for a spare battery in this too. Deep pockets. Notice my Keck Observatory hat. Everything I've shown that were electric except for the socks with the batteries has been made by Gerbing Electric Clothing. Now, if you're a Facebook user, there is a lot of companies that make electric gloves and vests. You'll find them everywhere. If you start looking for electric clothing, you'll be inundated with ads for electric clothing. I'm not sure that this is going to work, but I do have it open in the background. They like both 12-volt DC for running on an ATV, a motorcycle, snowmobile, or a car. If you ended up with a car without heat, you can use the 12-volt design, or the motorcycle stuff, also 12-volt. But for most of us, it's 7-volt DC with rechargeable batteries that you can unplug and plug in a new one, a fresh one. And I do have a full set of long johns and shirt I can share. I don't think this is going to work. It's just going to open the background. Is it working? No, my screen sharing is paused. Let's see if I can share the screen somehow. Resume share. Oh, that didn't work. I'll show it to you later. How's that? I should go back and show you the Gerbing line of clothing. This is just a cell phone image. It was about 20 degrees. Oh, no, it was 48 degrees. I'm sorry. But I put my cell phone up against the side of the house to take it. It was still pretty cold fingers. I wasn't wearing the gloves that would take the picture either. It was just at the turn of the year. The ISO settings are all there, but you can see it came with the night mode. Came out pretty well. I can actually see the Orion Nebula around the sword. But it's still bloody cold at 48. So I'm going to go into more modern winter observing equipment. This is for the faint of heart that still need to do image the night sky. You need to do astronomy whilst still staying warm. The Intelligent Telescope may be the perfect for the armchair astronomer's tool. We'll get there. Here we are. Now, these are the ZWC stars. I didn't go through every Intelligent Telescope on the market. There are at least 4 makers out there now, but these are some of the most accessible, even with the new tariffs that went against Chinese. The $500 C Star is now $550. The C Star S30 was $350. I think it's $375 now. The C Star S50, I could show you. You guys have all seen them. They're relatively compact. They're about the size of a helmet case. A good sized lunchbox, taller than a lunchbox actually. The C Star S30 it's the size of a Kleenex box. But like its competitor, the Dwarf, it has two telephoto lenses and a regular wide lens, and they're both 1920 by 1080. Different sensors, but having the ability to go wide means you can see all of the Orion Nebula, all of M45 and the Pleiades, and not just pieces of it that you would get with the Seastar S50, because it's a 50 millimeter triplet, APO triplet, as the name implies. It's a 50, 250 millimeter focal length versus 150. So, like many of us, this started with film photography, and even early DSLRs, we used fixed lenses for our cameras to take pictures. And then when the first compact Coolpix and things came out, we had all kinds of crazy ways to keep them cooled. Well, film, we didn't have to do that, but still, we had a limitation of a maximum of 30 minutes before you'd oversaturate the film material. The advantage is, excuse me, these all run off of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can literally be several feet away, even be inside your house. Sorry, more liquid. Fresca. But the Seastar S30 is about the size of the Dwarf 3. It's about a 30 millimeter, I think the 32 on the Dwarf. But the ability to have the telephoto lens is what makes the difference. All right, now this is Seastar S50 images that I took in the winter. Being, excuse me a second, I need to mute. Sorry about that. This is as wide an image as I could get with the Orion Nebula. I'm missing a fair part of it, about a third, a quarter maybe. It's not as detailed as the S30. It's a 5-minute exposure with that. We couldn't pull that off with film if we tried for 3 times the time. Now, M45, on the other hand, right, it's 7 sisters. I got 4. It's just 30 would get them all. That's its sacrifice of focal length versus going deeper or narrower, I should say. Now, hello, move on. Let's try that here again. All right, there we go. Couple more Seastars, 5 minutes, 18 minutes. You can see I've even got some spiral arms showing up in M81 over there. And the color I pulled out of M1, which I thought was kind of neat. That's a hard one to see visually without a filter. Okay, now many of the others are in that same 50 millimeter to 80 millimeter range. One's made by Vaillancourt and the Stellina. This one's in France. Another, I forgot where the manufacturing is, but they're all similar. The one that's different above all others, the Stellina, the Vaillancourt, the Dwarf, the ZWO Seastars, is this one. This is a Celestron Origin. It's literally built off the Raza, a Roe Ackerman Schmidt astrograph. So it's a native f2.2 telescope as is before they start doing an imaging equipment on it. And by the way, the Razas are not visual scopes. They're only imaging scopes. The Origin is a 6-inch f2.2 Raza with a Sony chip on the front. The camera is on the front as well as an integrated filter unit. Not a filter wheel, it's room for a single filter. A drawer, filter drawer, is perhaps the way to say that. So you can pull out a filter and plug in a different filter. The Z-Stars have filters built into them, light pollution filters and a deep sky filter. And it's even got a dew heater. But here, these are images I used by permission. They're from my friend Phil Harrington. Phil Harrington's probably best known for his binocular work. He wrote the binocular column in Astronomy magazine for the last 30 years. He's even written books touring the universe with binoculars and an application that goes with it, tuba, touring the universe of binoculars for astronomy. But these were taken with 1 hour exposure with the celestron origin. I couldn't have pulled that out with my baby Sea Star, or the Big Brother Sea Star S50 with an hour. I just couldn't do it. They're all 15-second exposures, too. The subframes are stacked. It's just that amazing. The one on the right uses an SB Boney SB220 dual band filter, and the one on the left, I think he's using just a deep sky filter, the elephant trunk. See how clear the stars are and how much nebulosity, especially in these coal sack, the deep, dark nebula that you pull out of the elephant trunk. I am so very happy that Phil let me borrow these for this talk. It's just, this is what intelligent astronomy, do it from your armchair instead of getting cold, is what is all about. All right, let's just settle this up and say, don't forget your lip balm or chapstick. Use liberally and frequently, and hydrate. Those of you that know me personally know that I am a coffee addict. Caffeine is not your friend when you're out in the cold because it just takes, it's like beer. I don't know, don't drink, but I think there's a saying that beer goes in and beer goes out. Coffee does the same thing. And when you're wearing 15 layers, getting to go to the bathroom is not an easy thing. So if you have to, hot cocoa, chocolate's no better for you than coffee, but water gets cold real fast. If you can handle tea, tea, hot cocoa, anything, water, hydrate. The wind is going to wick moisture out of your body, even whatever's exposed. Put your fingers for half an hour or 5 minutes using a hand controller or your face. It's going to happen. And that means your lips are going to get chapped too. You'll thank me if you forgot to think about chapstick. Now, I could stop right here, but I do have 3 more slides. And I updated them here to all say March, even though I can't spell. So that's it. I don't know, time-wise, been less than 45 minutes. I've had no interruptions. Are there any hands up, Chris?
No.
All right, then I'll go through this very quickly, unless people are going, no, we get them off the stage, get the hook. All right, for quick views, binoculars, anything that is using the unaided eye. This Orion, Auriga, Taurus, and the whole Hyades systems. The Pleiades is something you'll enjoy even more with binoculars. The Andromeda and the Great Red Square. Cancer, it's hard one to find because it's only 3 stars or 4. But you got M44 in Cancer, something you'll never see in a big telescope, but in binoculars or a small under 80 millimeter scope, it's wonderful to enjoy. Maybe even 100 millimeter. Winter planets before sunrise and after sunset, they're still here. Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn. Neptune is going away fast. I'll get to that very shortly. Dressed a little better, got binoculars. You can see M44 in Cancer, open star cluster. It's a beautiful star cluster, it really is. Of course, M45. There's nothing like the Pleiades. All the ionized gases that just from the stars behind it are showing the gases around the stars. Really, the Merope Nebula, wonderful stuff to look at. And you know what's here, M42. And we have any novices? Or we do have a guest. The double cluster, often overlooked. It's like my friend Julian often said, like diamonds on a background of black velvet. It's right between Perseus and Cassiopeia. In a small telescope, you can usually see one or the other. In binoculars or a really small scope, you can see them both together. Beautiful. M31, it's hard to get into a single view. Binoculars will do that for you. 81 and 82, you can easily see together in a pair of binoculars. Even a small scope. I've done it with a 105. And then, of course, the beautiful open clusters in Auriga, M35, 36, and 37, and not in that order. But one of them is below Auriga. It's kind of a fun thing to see. All right, now these targets will need a little bit more clothing because you're going to need a telescope to be out there. 81 and 82, of course, we discussed it's a binocular object, but either under eyepiece with a telescope, you can really see them individually. They're spectacular. And then, of course, M42 and M43, you can use an O3 and an H2 regions or with a nebula filter and or an oxygen 3 filter. It really makes it stand out a lot. All right, now I've got specific times here for March for these planets. Venus before 8 o'clock. After that, it's good night. Lucifer morning star. I love that. That talk from Copernicus coming up this Saturday. I hope people get to tune in to see it. Saturn, it sets before 6:30, and since the sun is still up, forget it. It was two weeks ago when we were supporting the talk for the eclipse with our telescopes out at night. We could still see Saturn very close to the sun if you used a block, but it's getting really hard now. Neptune, it sets close to 7, so it's gone too all effectively. Uranus, on the other hand, sets closer to midnight. Mercury is really close to Venus. You can separate them. They're like a couple of degrees apart, but now they're setting at 8 o'clock. So as long as the sun is out of your way, Venus was a brilliant little crescent last Monday. Beautiful. And Mercury was just about 3 degrees to the east and a little bit south by a couple of degrees. Easy to find, really was, especially with the go-to, but you could leap around it with a small scope. And then, of course, all 3 of the Messier objects that make up the area near M31. And if you've got a nice enough telescope, you can pick out M32 and M110 if you're dressed appropriately. If you're not, you'll say M31 and go in. M1, very hard to see in binoculars without filters. It's hard, but you can do it. If you put a high contrast filter on it, you can see it very easily in a telescope. Riga, small, low power, wide field eyepieces. They're beautiful open clusters. Don't put anything like beyond a 10-inch in there, maybe 12, but 16, just go back to binoculars. It's just too small. They're too small to enjoy. All right, that's it. In other words, thank you. Fine.